Good afternoon, Earth. This is Adam Sturch broadcasting from the Mushroom Mansion, Taos, New Mexico, working on oil painting Medusa's crown, retitled from Medusa's hair. So this one's going to be very much like, well, not very much, but in its compositional style, technique, very much like a Light from Nowhere, a painting of a wood stove with a glowing spots, points of light. You know, here, I just do this. It is. Uh-oh, I'm not going to be able to move my camera that far, I don't think. Alright, but if you can see that painting there. Uh-oh, that's my shoulder. Fuck. Oh, God, I'm on a step stool. I got my tripod very high. Alright. I can't tell if it's focused or not. Because I'm craning my neck to see. I guess I could move the little handy-dandy flip thing, huh? Yeah, I'm not going to, though. I think that focused. But anyway, very much like that painting in its compositional structure, in that the line work is going to be very simple, and it's going to be very reliant on color and detail. I want the rye seed pod woman to be very detailed, gold and green, moving up into deep purples, where the shadow will be eclipsing her. As you can see, perhaps, there is a line drawn in for a sun, so we're going to make that bright yellow, and then hit white on top of it to give her the appearance of sort of a deeper yellow aura immediately around her head and shoulders, which will be shadowed a deep purple, moving into gold. And then the background, I'm going to do a deep purple blue, and then hit that with a little bit of white to aura her in reverse with deeper purple and lighter sky surrounding. And then throw a bright green slash for the stalk to start developing that. So we'll see how far we can get. Anyway, sorry for the ramble, but this one's going to take a minute, so I thought I'd set it up with a little explanation.
And then they go away and nothing changes.
Okay, here we go.
Dili was opened by the Obama administration in 2014. It's been filled up with
over a little bit so YouTube doesn't
parents.
block me for the presence of a nipple on the other painting.
Administration kept it open for
They may already. Did anyone see that?
I
hope not. Stack like you didn't if you did.
Trump is making everything worse. The conditions
Should go pretty easily.
are deplorable. They're getting worse and worse.
Here we go.
But it's very important as this protest movement develops across this country, as the calls for more demonstrations grow and grow, as calls for a general strike grow. The Democratic Party is as equally responsible as Trump for creating the infrastructure of mass family and adult detention in this country, and it is necessary that this protest movement stay 100 miles away from the Democratic Party and develop its orientation to the working class. That's the only way that Dili is going to be shut down, that the families inside, like my clients, are going to be freed, and that has got to be rule number one with these protests as they develop going forward.
I'm wondering, Javier Hidalgo, if you can describe the conditions inside as we hear this painful cry of children and parents, let us out, let us out.
Yeah. The conditions are, imagine you were in a jail. And imagine it was a jail that was probably conditions worse than any jail that our criminal justice system would put someone in. Now imagine you're in there with your child, watching your child deteriorate day after day, and it's a jail that no one in there has actually done anything wrong, right? No criminals are in immigrant detention. They can't be. They would be in our criminal justice system, right? And every day the guards are there saying, well, if you want this to end, just give up your case, right? And so imagine that condition. Imagine being there with a breastfeeding child under the age of 1, and the water that they give you to mix with formula smells so bad that your child won't take it down, right? That's the type of conditions. The lack of medical care is constant. And let me just say, my context for this, right, is, our organization has been working, providing legal services to families in family detention since Obama opened them in 2014 in some form, right? We've been documenting these harms. These harms aren't new. it's almost as it's a tool that just keeps getting recycled and used, but the conditions are just horrific. And it's unimaginable, and you almost have to go and see it. I can describe it in and out, right? Lack of adequate food. We often hear about food with bugs or worms in it, half frozen food being given, guards yelling at parents if their kids are making too much noise or they're asking for an extra apple. Yesterday when the Congress folks tried to meet, we understood from the clients that we were meeting with that same day, right, that they were pretty much locked in their rooms, except to be escorted to meet with us in legal visitation. And they were locked in their rooms, and the guards just tossed crayons on the floor for the kids to play with to keep them busy. There's no educational resources. What they are given is laughable. And some of the things that are new are a lot of these families, which this hasn't happened all that often, in the recent years that they've used family touches. We're seeing a lot of families that have been here in our communities for a long time, taken into the detention centers while they're still trying to process a case. So you're talking about kids who have been going to school, understand the difference between a rigorous academic curriculum and then giving coloring packets, right? And so that's the level of conditions. And despite all the protections that exist, and let me say, there's very few protections that exist. ICE has taken a position that they don't actually apply because they don't want them to anymore. And they're just ignoring them and flouting them. So you have families in there that are in there up towards 100 days, upwards of 100 days, as high as Eric's client, who has been there unimaginable amount of time, right?
Let me ask Eric Lee about this family that they have been there for many months. What about the Flores decision where children aren't supposed to be detained longer than 20 days?
Well, this family has been persecuted by Stephen Miller and Donald Trump and the White House. They are the wife and child of the individual who carried out the attack on a peaceful demonstration in Boulder, Colorado in June. The White House Twitter and the fascists who run their Twitter page called for the family to be illegally deported using cynical emojis. A federal judge shut that down, but they have not been released because this government is persecuting them, not for anything that they did, but for something that somebody else did. And in this country, that is not supposed to happen in a democracy. That's what happens in police state dictatorships. That's what Videla did in Argentina. Punish opponents of the perceived opponents of the regime or criminals, etc., etc. The Flores settlement essentially presents families with a sort of Sophie's choice. What is a 5-year-old supposed to do? They're supposed to agree to leave their mother, especially under conditions where they've essentially just lost their father for all intents and purposes. That is not a choice that these kids are really going to make. And in my client's situation, given the level of vitriol with which the government has pursued them, they cannot go back to their home country of Egypt. They will be killed or arrested if they go there. One final point I would make about this family: an immigration judge ruled that they are significant flight risk and denied them bond on that basis, citing, among other reasons, a, quote, lack of property and assets. That immigration judge made that ruling independently about each of these children. A 5-year-old child is in detention in this country because of a lack of property and assets. That's how the immigration system works in this country.
Eric, we're showing the picture of the 5-year-old. What's the 5-year-old's name? It's a drawing of stick figures in a cage.
Yes, so for privacy reasons, I'm not going to reveal the children's names. But this is a drawing that the 5-year-old girl gave me in person over the weekend in Dilley, and it's expressive of the feelings. She told me that she has nightmares every night where she is being chased by an animal and she cannot get away because she's in a cage. This is a deliberate policy to ruin these children's lives. They will never fully recover.
The 18-year-old child, she's separated from the others?
That's right. Habiba Soliman is her name, since she's now turned 18. She turned 8. All of these children had a birthday in this detention center. Imagine that wonderful celebration. She has been separated from her family, and not only that, denied visitation rights and denied religious accommodations as a practicing Muslim, based on retribution for her decision to speak out to the media last week. That's correct.
Also being held at Dilley, at this immigration jail, is a 7-year-old named Diana Crespo. She and her parents were detained in the parking lot of a hospital in Portland, Oregon 2 weeks ago. Her parents were trying to get help for the second grader who had a long-lasting nosebleed, but they never made it inside the hospital. The Oregon Nurses Association condemned what happened, saying, quote, "No parent should ever be forced to weigh their child's health against the risk of detention." Can you describe her situation, Eric, and then Javier to talk about the examples of this? But start with Eric.
I can't speak to another minor's situation just for privacy reasons, but I will say that this is happening all over the country. This administration is going around. It's basically private army of state assassins, and that's what they are. That they're killing American citizens at point blank range in Minneapolis, almost on a weekly basis. And separating families. And again, there's nothing new about a federal policy of family separation. The Obama administration did that to millions of families. The Biden administration did so too. But this is a deliberate policy, as Stephen Miller calls it, remigration, with its root in all of the sort of fascist doctrines of the late 19th and 20th centuries coming back again. And the population of this country, on the anniversary of our revolution, where the Declaration says there's a right of revolution. When the government violates the rights of the population, we have a right to alter or abolish it. And that, I think, is the way forward in these next weeks and months.
Javier Hidalgo, if you could talk about this particular place, Dilley, also Carnes in Texas, home to the only immigrant detention centers in the country that hold children and their parents. So virtually any family that's arrested anywhere, and maybe you could address the Oregon family, are deported and sent to Texas. Is that right?
Yes, but let me make a point. Very recently, there were 3 family detention centers in the country. There was also one in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvanians got that close. It's possible to get this close, right? And so I just want to make that point. So now there's 2. We hear rumors that there's intent to open another. It takes an appetite from the community to get them shut down, among other things. Carnes and Dilley right now are the only detention centers that we understand are able to detain children, and that really just comes from the contracts that ICE has with the private prison companies that run these places, right? And the local municipalities, right? And so there's really nothing else that stops them from doing that other than money. And the contracts and how they set that up. Right now, they're not detaining families in Carnes. Last year, when they did restart detaining families, they started detaining them at Carnes, and then they had to reopen Dilley because Dilley had functionally been shut down, and even really before they were fully reopened, but open enough in April, they shifted because they can, in theory, hold more families in the Dilley detention jail, right? I keep saying detention center, it's a jail. The families that you see there, the example from Oregon, we're not working directly with her to my knowledge. Her story is exactly the same of so many families, right? We want, as a country, our community members to participate in our institutions, go to hospitals when they're sick, go to their immigration court hearings, go to any other appointments that they have. And so many families that we're working with get arrested at those things. They walk into essentially a trap, right? They've done nothing wrong other than showing up where they're supposed to show up when they're supposed to be there, and they're here now, right? And they come here. What's scary about this situation is they're not going to get the adequate medical care. We were just contacted by a horrified doctor, right? Where, and this is not new. I've had this happen multiple times. when an actual medical professional sees the condition of the children that are coming out of there, they're horrified because it's just medical neglect on the inside, right? And I fear for any child that needs that kind of medical attention, and there are many. And just a point on the Flores protections, that is a settlement from the 1980s that was never intended to be the everlasting source of protections. It's written into that settlement that these protections, the settlement is good until they're codified into the rulemaking. That's never happened, regardless of who's been, whatever administration's been here. And so what we have is this settlement that just sits there, that's the only source, and it's inadequate. And reform is inadequate. It just needs to get shut down. There's no purpose other than to punish and harm families, and it's not okay.
Javier Hidalgo, we want to thank you so much for being with us, legal director at Raices, and Eric Lee, immigration attorney representing a mother and her 5 kids, as well as other immigrants jailed at ICE's South Texas ICE jail in Dilley, Texas. They were speaking to us from San Antonio. Coming up, we go to Newark, New Jersey. We'll be joined by Congresswoman LaMonica McIver, facing 17 years in prison, allegedly for assaulting a federal life officer outside an ICE jail, the Delaney Hall in Newark, as ICE agents were arresting Mayor Ras Baraka. She has vehemently denied the charges against her. Stay with us.
Through the winter's ice and cold, down to Glen Avenue, a city of flame fought fire and ice neath an occupier's boots. King Trump's private army from the DHS, guns belted to their coats, came to Minneapolis to enforce the law, or so their story goes. Against smoke and rubber bullets in the dawn's early light, citizens stood for justice, their voices ringing through the night. And there were bloody footprints where mercy should have stood.
Streets of Minneapolis, an excerpt from the new song by Bruce Springsteen. He said Wednesday, "I wrote this song on Saturday, recorded it yesterday, and released it to you today in response to the state terror being visited on the city of Minneapolis." We'll hear more of the song later in the broadcast. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman. We go now from New Jersey's most famous musician to New Jersey Democratic Congresswoman LaMonica McIver. She's facing up to 17 years in prison stemming from an incident last May when she and 2 other Democratic Congress members went to inspect Delaney Hall, the private immigration prison run by Geo Corporation under contract with ICE. The federal government claims McIver assaulted an immigration officer as federal agents were arresting Newark Mayor Ras Baraka, who'd accompanied the congressional delegation to Delaney Hall. Congressmember McIver has vehemently denied the charges. This is a brief clip of the scene outside the ICE jail that day.
Now circle there, circle there. What the hell? Circle there, circle there, circle there. Absolutely. Now go to the front. Congresswoman, is she right in front of you? Get off. Get off.
10 days later, then acting U.S. Attorney for New Jersey, Alina Habba, dropped the charges against Newark Mayor Ras Baraka, but at the same time, she announced 3 felony charges against Congressmember McIver, including assaulting, resisting, impeding, and interfering with federal officers. Not since 1799 have such charges been brought against a House member. Alina Habba is the former personal attorney for Donald Trump. In December, she resigned after a panel of federal judges ruled she's serving in her position unlawfully. Members of Congress have the oversight authority to visit DHS facilities without prior notice. But the Trump administration has repeatedly attempted to restrict or thwart that access. We go now to Newark, where we're joined by the Democratic Congresswoman LaMonica McIver. Welcome to Democracy Now! It's great to have you with us. We have spoken with Mayor Ross Baraka several times. This is our first time talking to you. Explain the state of the case against you. I mean, the judges already ruled that the U.S. attorney, Alina Habba, the former private attorney of President Trump, was serving illegally, but you still have these charges against you that she brought?
Yes, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be on with you. Yes, you're absolutely correct. These charges are still pushing forward. I'm still fighting it. I'm in the second stretch of that fight as we filed an appeal to the Third Circuit Court to basically have these charges dismissed based off legislative immunity. As you so clearly laid out, you know, I was there to do my job, to conduct oversight along with two of my other colleagues when ICE and DHS created that whole fiasco that happened out there. And so we're looking forward to taking the case, you know, to getting these charges thrown out, and looking forward to being in front of a judge at the Third Circuit in a couple of months. And so we're just waiting on that process right now.
So, but explain what you were doing. It relates certainly today, as some judges have ruled that the Trump administration can delay Congress members or legislators from inspecting these facilities. In May, talk exactly about what happened, about why you were at Delaney Hall, what it is for a global audience, you and two other Congress members, and then what happened to Ross Baraka and what happened to you.
So of course, so we went there for an oversight visit, which is something that Congress, you know, statutorily have the right to do. We can show up to any ICE facility and have an inspection unannounced, announced. That's, you know, in statute for us to do that. And so me, two of my colleagues from New Jersey, which we have done in the past before, we showed up to ICE facility in New Jersey other than Delaney Hall and conducted an oversight visit. And just that day we were going to Delaney Hall, we had gotten a lot of calls about Delaney Hall. We had no idea that this facility had opened up. The mayor of the city had said that this place was not cooperating with city guidelines, and so we're like, hey, we need to go here and check this place out. Mayor Baraka did not accompany us to the facility for the oversight visit. It was literally just members of Congress. Mayor Baraka showed up later because he was coming there for the press conference that we were having after our tour, but he was not there to come with us on the visit. I mean, he had been showing up there at this facility every day prior to us coming, because once again, this facility has basically, you know, just refused to adhere to city guidelines as it relates to inspections and fire code inspections. They claim they're a federal facility, but they're not. It's a private prison that has a contract with the federal government. They're not a federal facility. And so we showed up there to have our oversight visit, and we were met with an army of ICE agents, folks from DHS. I mean, I had never experienced anything like that, nor had we when we went to another facility to inspect that facility. And so they created a whole fiasco, you know, unlawfully arrested the mayor for trespassing after they let him into the gate. I mean, it was just a whole complete nightmare there that day, with them basically trying to restrict us from having oversight of this facility. Just days later, I mean, they put out this whole new protocol from DHS that said Congress members had to give 7 days notice for them to show up to have oversight, just constantly trying to stop Congress from having oversight and holding the administration accountable. And we continue to see that this from last May and now continuing on each and every day with the different scenarios from this administration. And so I continue to show up to do oversight, continue to hold this agency, but also these facilities accountable. I've been back to Delaney Hall since then. I had a detainee who died there, a 42-year-old a Haitian immigrant who was completely healthy before going to this facility, died within 24 hours of being at this facility. And so I went back there to have an inspection. A couple of weeks after we went last May, there was an entire riot at this same detention center because detainees were not getting food. They were starving, and detainees were upset about that, and they had a whole riot, and they had about 4 detainees who escaped through a makeshift wall there. So that just goes to show you why oversight is so important and why we have to continue to apply pressure and do our jobs as members of Congress and, you know, go to these facilities. You know, the government has said, hey, I went there, we were there to protest, we were there to do all of these things, but we didn't go there for anything. I didn't go there for protest. We went there for one reason, and that one reason was to go there to protect the people who were there, to find out what was going on, to make sure that things were running okay inside this facility, which we have the right to, and that is our job to do so. And so, you know, I'm not gonna stop doing what I'm supposed to be doing and what the people of the 10th Congressional District here in New Jersey have elected me to do, and that is to protect them and hold this administration accountable.
You were there with New Jersey Congress members Rob Menendez and Bonnie Watson Coleman. Now, what is your legal situation? So often in these cases of political persecution, the process
All right.
is
This is taking a little time to get the detail around the edges of the little tiny mushrooms and the ergo fungus on the rye girl. So the other side should go a little more smoothly, and then we can block in large amounts of color for the main portion of the composition to start, and then throw in the green slash, and that'll probably end it for this session. So take 2 coming up.
This is what they're doing. They're
Take 2.
doing this with your taxpayer dollars, prosecuting a member of Congress for doing their job. It doesn't cost them anything because they're using taxpayer dollars to do so. But I think what it does is it inserts fear in other leaders to step up and hold the administration accountable. It's intimidation, it's bullying, and they're just using me as a tool and a prop to do so. And that's why I continue to stress how urgent, like, my case is, not because it's about me, but it's about the broader picture of how they are trying to stop Congress members from doing their job. I mean, and it's awful, but at the same time, that's why I continue to push forward, continue to work for the people of the 10th Congressional District and protect them from this administration, specifically ICE, because I'm not going to let them bully me out of doing my job. I'm just not. They're not going to bully me from stopping my work, and they're not going to take away my joy while I do it.
Congressmember McIver, as we are broadcasting, the White House so-called border czar, Tom Homan, just finished speaking. He held a news conference at around 7 a.m. Minnesota time. He said ICE and CBP are working to, quote, draw down the number of federal agents in Minneapolis. This is some of what he said.
State and local law enforcement. Again, I appreciate they all acknowledge that we do have federal immigration laws in this country that have been passed by Congress, and that ICE is in fact a legitimate law enforcement agency charged with enforcing those laws. We're not making this up, folks. ICE is enforcing laws enacted by Congress. They're a federal statute. That said, I'm not here because the federal government has carried its mission out perfectly. First thing I said to senior staff when I walked in here is what I told you. I didn't come here looking for photo ops or headlines. I come here looking for solutions. I do not want to hear that everything that's been done here has been perfect. Nothing's ever perfect. Anything can be improved on. And what we've been working on is making this operation safer, more efficient, by the book. The mission is going to improve because of the changes we're making it.
So that is the so-called border czar, who seems to have been sent to Minneapolis to replace Greg Bovino, the head of CBP. I'm used to saying CPB, the Corporation of Public Broadcasting, but President Trump ended that. So it's all about CBP now, Customs and Border Patrol. And he's been sent off to California. But there is Tom Homan, the man who was being investigated by the FBI until a few weeks ago for taking a kava bag filled with $50,000 of cash from 2 undercover FBI agents. That investigation has been squelched, though some of your fellow Congress members are calling for the video of him accepting that cash, people like Congressmember Raskin. But I'd like to end by asking you about whether you think the government is going to be partially shut down this weekend. And to respond to, you were really the precursor to Minneapolis, but to respond to what the Senate is threatening to do, as they say they want to separate DHS funding from the rest of the budget, and if the Republicans don't agree to, they won't vote for the bill.
Yeah, well, I truly believe we're heading to a shutdown because at the end of the day, look, who can even approve or give this agency, this rogue agency that we see murder 2 people in broad daylight in the last couple of weeks? How could we give them more money? Like, why would the Senate give them more money to operate? Obviously, there are some big issues within this department that is not operating, effectively. And so they should not be giving more money to cause more problems and more hurt and to terrorize American citizens. And so I do truly believe we're going to go to a shutdown. It's shameful that Republicans in charge in the Senate won't separate out the DHS funding and deal with the rest of the funding, but they want to continue to, be scared of Donald Trump, and they, keeping this package deal together instead of separating it out, knowing that they have issues. So I truly believe we're definitely going to be heading to a shutdown.
Democratic Congressmember LaMonica MacIver speaking to us from Newark, New Jersey. Thank you so much for joining us. Coming up, we look at how ICE is using facial recognition technology to track immigrants and protesters, or as the government calls them, agitators, in Minnesota and across the country. But first, more Bruce Springsteen.
Thugs beat up on his face and his chest. Then we heard the gunshots, and Alex pretty lay in the snow dead. Their claim was self-defense, sir. Just don't believe your eyes. It's our blood and bones and these whistles and foams against Miller and Norm's dirty lies. Oh, Minneapolis, I hear your voice. Crimes through the bloody mist. We'll remember the names of those who died on the streets of Minneapolis.
Streets of Minneapolis, just released by Bruce Springsteen, who definitely doesn't need facial recognition technology to recognize him or his voice. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. We turn now to the facial recognition technology widely being used by ICE and CBP agents to facilitate President Trump's mass deportation campaign. The smartphone app is called Mobile Fortify. Its existence was first reported by 404 Media last summer. With the app, immigration officers can scan faces of people they encounter and quickly search those faces against 200 million images stored in several government databases. According to a lawsuit brought by Illinois and Chicago earlier this month, the Department of Homeland Security has used the Mobile Fortify app in the field more than 100,000 times since it was launched. But is the app even accurate? And is it constitutional for government agents to scan people's faces without consent? Senate Democrats last month requested more information about the app from DHS, saying in part, quote, even when accurate, this type of on-demand surveillance threatens the privacy and free speech of everyone in the United States. For more, we're joined here in studio by Nathan Fried-Wessler, Deputy Director with the ACLU's Speech, Privacy, and Technology Project, focuses on litigation and advocacy around surveillance and privacy issues. Nate, welcome to Democracy Now! It's great to have you with us. Explain what this technology, what this app is.
This is a facial recognition app that's loaded onto the smartphones that DHS agents, ICE and CBP agents, are carrying with them. It links into a giant database of photos of people, as you said, more than 200 million photos, and into voluminous federal databases that include immigration-related records, border crossing records, purported criminal records. Some of these databases are notoriously error-filled, and it's being used on the street in ways that are dangerous, that are totally unprecedented in this country, and that are frankly blatantly illegal. It's being used on U.S. citizens, lawful permanent residents. It's being used indiscriminately by masked federal agents without people's consent, without a way to say no, in ways that are really harming people every day.
You know, I'm thinking about the recent arrest of the attorney and minister Levy Armstrong, who, when she was arrested, and they admitted that they changed her face, made her cry as she was being taken away, though she wasn't. Her lawyer said there was one ICE agent just filming her face.
Yeah, you know, we see a few different things happening in parallel here, and they're all related. We see during the so-called immigration stops and detentions, ICE and CBP agents using this face recognition app, even to the exclusion of people trying to show documentary evidence of citizenship. We also see these federal agents filming and harassing protesters, filming and harassing people who are just trying to record what's going on in their neighborhoods. We don't know the degree to which they're using face recognition technology there, but they are certainly going way beyond the bounds of what people's protected rights are.
This is Ken Klippenstein, the journalist, sharing a video on social media last week of an exchange between a legal observer in Maine and an immigration agent she's recording. The video begins with the agent photographing the observer's license plate. Here's the exchange.
It's not illegal to record.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah, why are you taking my information down?
Because we have a nice little database.
Oh, good.
And now you're considered a domestic terrorist. So.
We're videotaping you? Are you crazy?
Your response, Nate Breed, Wesley.
I want to be very clear here because the law is completely clear. The First Amendment to our Constitution protects your right to record law enforcement and government agents doing their jobs in public. That's a core protection for accountability so that we can know what the government is doing and when it is violating the law. Retribution against people for doing that violates the Constitution, it's illegal, and we at the ACLU and as a nation won't stand for it.
So what can you do about it? Apparently that this app, they're keeping photos up to 15 years?
That's right. It's totally unprecedented. You know, police around the country have been using face recognition in a different way, right? In investigations where there's an image of a suspect, and we know of numerous wrongful arrests from that use because this technology is glitchy. It gets it wrong a lot, and it gets it wrong particularly often when used on people of color, darker-skinned people. Of course, who are these masked federal agents grabbing off the street? People of color. They're racial profiling. They're taking people based only on the color of their skin, and they're using this very glitchy app to try to identify them and match them to immigration records, and we know it makes errors. We've actually seen that.
Tell us about the 20-year-old Somali-American U.S. citizen named Mubashir Khalif Hussein.
This is a client of the ACLU in a lawsuit that we brought on his behalf and a class of residents in Minnesota who have been subjected to unconstitutional and illegal stops and detentions by ICE. There are a number of violations that he and our other clients have suffered, but one of them is that our client, a U.S. citizen, was grabbed for no reason other than, we think, the color of his skin by federal agents. He repeatedly insisted that he was a U.S. citizen, repeatedly asked to be able to show them his U.S. passport card. Right?
Ooh, the glare's hitting that pretty hard, isn't it?
Status.
Well, anyway, that's
refused
purple
to look
if
at
you
any
can see it.
documentary evidence.
Here, let me adjust
They
that
shoved him in a
lamp.
car. They drove him to a facility. They insisted, after he tried to resist over and over, on scanning his face with this dangerous technology. And only after he finally had his face scanned and finally convinced them to look at his passport card did they let him go.
Alright,
mind
it's a
you, they
little
drove
dim
him
now,
7
but
miles to the outskirts of Minneapolis, let him go in a Minnesota
there we go.
winter, told him to walk
So
back
that's a
to
pretty
his
simple
office.
fill-in.
Luckily, his family
Just
was
blocked in the
desperately
color
trying to find
around
him.
the
He
rye
was on
woman
their way already
and
to
the
his federal
ergo
office to see if he
around
was there.
around the
It
ergo
was
on her
completely
crowning her head
complete
and
violation of his rights,
ergot
and this is happening
and
every day to people in Minneapolis and around
hit the
the
sun in
country.
the stalk.
Well, thank you for
So
being
from
with
there, we'll start developing glaze work and coloration of the rye girl with some deep golds and purples moving up towards her head, and like that. So that's it for the moment. Guess I can zoom in. The line work on her turned out pretty clean.
After a screening of the new film Steal the Story, Please, I'll be there with the director.
Circle's decent, some good texture starting to develop,
Check our website at democracynow.org.
and I'm pretty happy with that singular
I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks so much
green
for joining
wispy
us.
stroke there. Cool. So that starts this painting off. Thanks for watching. That's Adam Sturch broadcasting from the Mushroom Mansion House, New Mexico, working on oil painting Medusa's crown. Have a good day, Earth.